Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 2, Facing the Sphinx, from Facing the Sphinx by Marie L. Farrington. Chapter 1. Facing the Sphinx. They needs must find it hard to take truth for authority, who have so long mistaken authority for truth. A general version of the myth of the Sphinx, adopted by popular writers on Greek mythology, is the following. The origin of the myth of the Sphinx was not definitely known even to the ancients. The Sphinx itself was probably a religious symbol of the Egyptians, which was transferred to Greece and subsequently underwent a change of meaning. Among the Egyptians, the Sphinx seems to have been a symbol of royal dignity, betokening a combination of wisdom and strength. By the Greeks, however, it appears to have been regarded as a symbol of the burning, pestilence-breeding heat of the summer sun. The form, which was that of a lion, generally in a recumbent position with the breast and upper part of a beautiful woman, was an imitation of the original male sphinxes of Egypt. Ancient Egyptian art reveled in the creation of colossal sphinxes, which were carved out of granite. A notable example of this kind exists in the giant sphinx near the pyramids of Giza, which is 89 feet long. Moreover, Greek art was only acquainted with the sphinx in its female form, and departed from the Egyptian type by adding wings to the lion's body. This statement is utterly erroneous. We will prove subsequently that the Egyptian sphinx was at first feminine, a fact conclusively established by typology. It became masculine in a later stage of symbolism when primeval conceptions, or rather truisms, were undergoing an evolutionary transformation which did not affect the neighboring countries immediately. They had adopted the primitive emblem of the sphinx from the Egyptians, who thus embodied the greatest principle underlying their philosophical system. It is supremely ridiculous to fancy that a nation standing foremost as the center of a high civilization should have adopted meaningless symbols, for such would they have been if their true significance could not have been fathomed. Modern times have produced many Sisyphuses who have endeavored to interpret the riddle of the Sphinx and the apparently incongruous theogonies of bygone ages. The most popular authors, including Max Muller, who have expounded the mythologies of the ancients, have adhered to the unreasonable theory that every emblem had been invented by the diseased imagination of insane people, or must be explained either as a solar or a phallic glyph. But science progresses in giants' strides. Every age has produced at the transitory stage men capable of opening a new path through the entangled vines of a forgotten road. Those are thinkers who do not mistake authority for truth. Still, their task is arduous. They have to fight century-old prejudices, for we are all endowed with an extremely finite intelligence, and it requires strenuous efforts on our part to grasp what stands outside of the range of our most approved educational methods. Furthermore, it becomes almost impossible to convey to certain people a glimpse of scientific facts when clashing with their own routine and worn-out theories. Men well versed in mythological lore, such as Gerald Massey and Gaston Maspero, have proven without the shadow of a doubt the common origin of religions and languages. In the cosmogony and the anthropogenesis of mankind, we find irrefutable evidences that no religion was ever based on fiction, or was the sequence of a special revelation. Archaeology has demonstrated that no Egyptian papyrus, Indian tola, Assyrian tile, or Hebrew scroll should be accepted literally, that they are not a mere product of the fantastic imagination of anybody. Even nursery tales and superstitious reminiscences of ancient times have been traced back to their original source by typology, as surely as heraldry is conclusively shown as being derived from totem signs. The thing that has been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. The ancients had a profound knowledge of natural and cosmic laws, which they illustrated in their religious, or rather philosophical systems. When we will understand them thoroughly, they will unravel to us the bulk of the primitive, archaic wisdom. Of all the sciences which have contributed to the present impetus given to researches into the cosmogonies of antiquity, geology, astronomy, and archaeologist and foremost, why does not someone teach me the constellations and make me at home in the starry heavens which are always overhead, and which I do not half know to this day, says Carlyle. This just desire to be made conversant with a subject forever open to our observations would naturally lead to a more thorough investigation. Stars, moons, suns divulge to us every day and at every instant the hidden secrets of the past, present, and future. They are the eternal celestial book, the only true revealers of mysteries which, if fathomed, would unravel the beginning of our universe. It is not sufficient to know the constellations, for their names have left such a strong impression upon the human mind that an inquiry into their history throws a flood of light on the most important problem of modern times. They are indissolubly linked with symbology. Not one of these three sciences, that is, astronomy, geology, and archaeology, can be comprehended without the aid of the two others. One great incentive to the study of astronomy will yet be to find out at first hand what the cometes typified in the book above, with which we have been so deluded at second hand below, says the great lecturer G. Massey. Verily, no greater truth was ever uttered. Someday, not very far off, leaders in educational circles will perceive the absolute necessity of explaining astronomy by a compendium on symbolism and typology. Then a deviation from the old routine will produce startling results. History will be forced to alter its chronology, or rather correct its ridiculous anachronisms. The old, tottering edifice built upon errors that were bequeathed to us by centuries of gross ignorance will tumble never to rise again. In the intellectual struggle which is ever progressing towards higher attainments and greater discoveries, the worst stumbling block has been theological intolerance. The masses have been educated into accepting as truth what was propounded to them with authority. But a few years ago, the Bible was considered infallible on all matters pertaining exclusively to science. Educated persons undoubtedly do not believe any more in the literal sense of the creation of the world in 6 days, but they have not advanced very far from their starting point. Now that geology, astronomy, archaeology, and ethnology present cumulative evidences that upset entirely the accepted doctrines, why do theologians fight truth so stubbornly? Keys to the Jewish scriptures have been rediscovered, and it is only a question of a few years when the most ignorant ones will be able to read the Bible in its true meaning. The Catholic Church, foreseeing wisely the results of too abrupt a transition, has already come out with a declaration which is intended to smooth the way to concessions. The learned Abbé Favre, in one of his eloquent lectures delivered at the Sorbonne, has categorically declared that paleontology and archaeology may, without detriment to the veracity of the Holy Scriptures, discover traces of pre-Adamic man in the tertiary beds. Since the Bible disregards all creatures anterior to the last deluge but one, we are left free to admit the existence of man in the grey diluvium, in Pliocene, and even Eocene strata. It is surely an easy way of preparing an honorable surrender to the well-established fact of the antiquity of man on this earth. If we consider that, according to biblical reckonings, the deluge took place 2,448 years BC, and the world's creation 4,004 years BC, and that the most accurate researches of geologists and physicists have led them to assign to our globe an existence of at least 10 million years, Sir W. Thompson, we will have sufficient ground to wonder at such disproportionate data. Moreover, one of our most learned geologists, Mr. Huxley, considers the minimum adopted by Sir W. Thompson as unsatisfactory. He expresses his own opinion that, according to the laws of evolution, no less than 1 billion of our solar years have elapsed since vegetation appeared on our little planet. Mr. Darwin, in his Descent of Man, says, an ape nearly as large as a man, namely the Dryopithecus of La Tête, which was closely allied to the anthropomorphous Hylobates, existed in Europe during the Upper Miocene period, and since so remote a period the Earth has certainly undergone many great revolutions, and there has been ample time for migrations on the largest scale. At the period and place, whenever and wherever it may have been, when man first lost his hairy covering, he probably inhabited a hot country, and this would have been favorable for a frugivorous diet, on which, judging from analogy, he subsisted. We are far from knowing how long ago it was when man first diverged from the Catarrhine stock, but this may have occurred at an epoch remote as the Eocene period, for the higher apes had diverged from the lower apes as early as the Upper Miocene period, as shown by the existence of the Dryopithecus. Mr. Darwin's opinion being thoroughly endorsed by many scientific men of high standing, the passage just quoted justifies anthropologists for assigning to man a hoary ancestry. Though frequently mentioned in standard works, the exact duration of the different periods of the Earth's formation is not established even approximately. For those unacquainted with the geological divisions of the epochs corresponding to our planet's evolutionary phases, we will give them as follows. Seen here, evolutionary laws as expounded by Darwinists are not accepted by all scientists as an absolute truth. It is simply a hypothesis held by Paracelsus and before him by many sages of antiquity, which rests on a solid basis if we accept the ape theory. Natural selection has not been sustained either. It has been upset considerably by prominent scientific men, among whom stand foremost Monsieur de Quatrefages and Danilevsky. Anthropologists are at variance also concerning the age of man, their estimates varying from 500,000 down to 50,000 years. This divergence of opinions, however, affects only details. The main result is illustrated daily in the disappearance of ignorance and the production of new evidences tending to rectify mistakes and harmonize scientific theories. Gaudry, in his book Modern Science, says that the oldest skulls and skeletons which date from the glacial period are probably at least 100,000 years old. They are specimens of a fine race, tall in stature, large in brain, and on the whole superior to many existing races of mankind, thus disproving our descent from the ape, but not the fundamental laws of evolution. Professor Winchell's opinion as to the antiquity of the Mediterranean race is also worthy of more than a passing remark. He believes that the white race made its appearance during the later decline of the continental glaciers, but he adds at the same time that this does not concern the antiquity of the black and brown races, since there are numerous evidences of their existence in more southern regions, in times remotely pre-glacial. Yet we have abundant proofs that the black race overran Europe at an unknown epoch. For the types of skulls found there have been of two kinds, the orthognathous and the prognathous, or the Caucasian and Negro types. This authenticated fact is greatly in favor of Darwin and Gerald Massey, the great symbologist. Both hold that every custom, symbol, and religion can be traced back to Inner Africa. The latter gentleman endorsing consequently the famous saying of Reverend Robert Taylor, "Bind it about thy neck, write it upon the tablet of thy heart. Everything of Christianity is of Egyptian origin." By forcing Mother Earth to lay bare her bosom, priceless treasures have been brought out of the excavations, as in the department of the Haute-Garonne, where a wonderful scene of bygone ages was brought to light. Squatting near the remains of a coal fire, 17 men were discovered in company with antediluvian mammals. They wore amulets around their necks, and the broken pottery scattered around the place testified to their knowledge of certain arts common to civilized races. Though the word Paleolithic means earlier Stone Age, the name itself is an anomaly. Extant relics of that epoch are, it is certain, very scarce thus far, but they are decidedly artistic. In the Thengin Grotto, Switzerland, an excellent sketch of a reindeer feeding has been unearthed. It is at least 500,000 years old, and it would do credit to any modern animal painter. The engraving of the head of a horse also reveals talent. With the surprises the future reserves to explorers, the artistic skill displayed in the relics which have been recovered from the cave dwellers may induce scientists to reconsider their preconceived idea concerning the civilization of the Paleolithic races. But a short time ago, a very important discovery was made by a French citizen residing in Gainesville, Texas. Having occasion to sink a well, he selected a spot in a valley near a ravine of great length. During heavy rains, it is transformed into a raging torrent, which deposits in the valley limestone, gravel, mud, and all sorts of debris. After reaching a depth of 4 feet in a limestone formation, Mr. Somme, such was the name of the French gentleman, came upon the vertebrae and ribs of an animal of the size of a small pig's ribs, only it was of a tapering shape. Monsieur Somme proceeded carefully in the work of unearthing the bones toward the tapering end, and successfully uncovered 17 rattles, the largest one measuring 6 inches across. Then people congregated at the place. Brought thither by the strange discovery, they eagerly helped in the work of unearthing the remains of the monster. After uncovering 19 feet, judge of their surprise when they perceived the skeleton of a gigantic man in the stomach of the huge reptile. The remains of both are well preserved, as perfect, in fact, as when first denuded of flesh. Near the bones of the man's right hand is a stone hatchet, very similar to those found among the implements pertaining to Paleolithic races. Let those who believe in a first man called Adam ponder over this unwritten page of the history of our planet. Another strong evidence in corroboration of Darwinist theories is furnished by the Neolithic lake dwellers. Geologists assert that the plants found in the strata corresponding to the same period were mainly of African origin, though discovered in Switzerland. They claim also to have found remains of looms, pottery, cereals, sheep, horses, etc. Monsieur de Mortillier, professor of prehistoric anthropology in Paris, places man in the mid-Miocene period, and a number of learned men who have devoted years to this most interesting subject have recognized the fact that a Miocene civilization, once proven, it will upset entirely the Stone Age period theory. No one has pleaded more earnestly for the archaic ages than the noted French writer Jacques Collot. In his Histoire des Vierges, les peuples et les continents disparus, he says, whatever may have been the place where a civilization more ancient than that of Greece, of Egypt, and of India was developed, it is certain that this civilization did exist, and it is highly important for science to recover its traces, however feeble and fugitive they be. Hardly 30 years ago, the chronology of Egypt, India, and China was ridiculed, the limit to man's appearance on this earth being then irrevocably fixed at between 6,000 and 7,000 years now. Uncontrovertible testimony exists securing to the human race a place in the Miocene period, but it is refused admission into the Eocene age thus far, though the soil produced vegetables and animals at the same geological epoch. We do not know how long it will take for science to determine, even approximately, the number of years contained in each period, but we do hope that when scientists proclaim such a fact, they will do it on an irrefutable basis. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.